Hi, welcome back to Switzer on Australia's Business Channel. I'm Nadine Blaney, just filling in for Pete this evening. Well, one of Australia's biggest accountancy firms is calling for businesses to take a look at the benefits of moving their real property into self-managed super funds. Nexia Court & Company says this move alone will save you on stamp duty, reduce capital gains tax, and decrease risk. And Barclay Judge, the Superannuation Director at Nexia Court & Co., joins me in the studio. Barclay, really good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Well, that intro certainly made it sound like something SMEs should be doing, but let's start simple. Just tell us what business real property, or BRP, actually is. What falls under that umbrella? Okay,
business real property is basically property that is used in business. So it's your land and your buildings on top of that land. It can include office buildings, warehouses, shop fronts, all of that kind of things.
Okay, so for small to medium-sized business owners, how can they be sure, and these are that have SMSFs, how can trustees be sure that their property falls under that category? Is there a test that they can do, or do they sort of need to get advice on that type of thing?
They're best to get advice on that type of thing. In most cases, it either falls under the definition or not, but in most cases, yes, they're going to need to get advice just to make sure that it is business real property and that it's not falling in some grey area.
And that is, of course, what Nexia Court & Co. does. You guys are superannuation experts? That's
right. We're Australia's one of Australia's leading accounting firms, and we have we mainly cater to small to medium enterprises, but we also look after high net worth individuals, large corporations, and not-for-profit entities as well.
Okay. So today we're talking specifically about SMEs and their SMSFs. And their BRPs. I can just, foresee a few problems here. But anyways.
A lot of acronyms.
How many small to medium-sized businesses actually have SMSFs, do you think?
Okay, so in our practice, we find about half of small to medium enterprises have SMSFs. We find that they enjoy the asset protection advantages and the tax benefits that they get from having a self-managed superannuation fund.
Okay, so presumably a lot of those small to medium-sized businesses would have business real property. So it's quite a significant number of businesses that could potentially be interested in doing this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So why we're talking about this now, why to put the business real property into an SMS now, more than ever before?
Okay, well, just recently the New South Wales government have changed the Duties Act. Previously, to transfer, say, a $1 million property into a self-managed super fund would have involved in excess of $40,000 in stamp duty that would have been payable. Now it's just a flat rate of $50 for those business owners that have business property in their own name. So it's a massive benefit for small business owners, and that's the reason why we're revisiting our clients and reanalysing whether they're better to transfer their property into superannuation funds.
So that's a massive stamp duty cut in New South Wales.
Absolutely.
How about the other states? Is this across the board, or how do they sort of compare?
Okay, so Victoria and WA have similar arrangements. The other states, the normal stamp duty arrangements apply. They differ from state to state, but this is a recent change that the New South Wales government has brought in.
And as you mentioned, we're talking savings of tens of thousands of dollars potentially.
Well, that's right. The stamp duty on transfer of property is on a sliding scale. So for a $1 million property, it's in excess of $40,000. Previously, now it's $50. That $50 is a flat rate now. So all small business owners, or all business owners, can really benefit from this.
Okay, so walk us through those benefits, though, because presumably, despite the fact that the stamp duty has been cut dramatically, this is all to maximise tax benefits.
Exactly.
At the rate of tax.
Exactly. So that's one of the major advantages of having anything in superannuation, is for the tax benefits. Earnings in superannuation only get taxed at 15%, or 0% if you're actually able to draw out an income stream from the superannuation fund. Whereas, obviously, a lot of people are paying their marginal tax rate or the company tax rate of 30%, but that's still significantly higher than superannuation. So by transferring a superannuation asset, a business real property, into a superannuation means that you can get the nice tax deduction of paying that rent to your superannuation fund for the business property and get that tax deduction at your marginal tax rate, but only pay 15% or 0% tax within your superannuation fund.
Okay, so walk us through this. How does this work? You have a property, you're a business owner who has a property, you want to put this into your SMSF. So your SMSF buys the property essentially.
Exactly. So the superannuation fund needs to buy that property off yourself. Now there was previously excessive stamp duty costs, but for people who own that business property themselves and transfer it into their super fund, there's going to be no stamp duty now. There is also capital gains tax on the transfers, but most small business entities can apply for the small business CGT concessions, which means that expert advice is going to be needed for this, but it essentially means that CGT, capital gains tax, will be virtually nil as well for a lot of people. So then, once the business property is held within the superannuation fund, then the owner just rents that property off the superannuation fund.
So, and presumably, if your SMSF is buying this property from the business, then that's also the added benefit is that you have that cash then to play with, to invest.
Exactly. So if you have in say $100,000 or $200,000 in your superannuation fund, you can use that cash to purchase the property, and that means you have access to $200,000 cash now, which you can use as working capital in your business, or you can use it to pay off personal debts, those type of things. Now, also, a superannuation fund can now borrow, so they can borrow from a bank if there's not enough cash held within the superannuation fund.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because if you've only got 200 grand in your SMSF, then chances are your property might be worth more than that. So how do you go out about getting that extra money? Exactly.
Well, that's a good question. A superannuation fund, just recently, it was only a couple of years ago that a superannuation fund is now allowed to borrow. So a superannuation fund can borrow to purchase a particular property, but it needs to be held in what's called a limited recourse loan. So that means that this superannuation fund, the lender can only go after that particular asset that is being purchased in the superannuation fund. Another method that we often use to transfer property into a superannuation fund is just to utilise their member contributions. So every year, members or people are allowed to put a certain amount into their superannuation fund. We can treat that transfer of property as part of their contribution into their superannuation. Okay, so there's lots of different ways and little interests I can't say the word. Intricacies involved in this. So again, it's one of those situations where you probably, as a trustee, don't want to take this on all on your own. That's right. It can be complex, especially if it's new to you. But there's lots of different and fantastic strategies that we can use in transferring this property. But it's actually not too difficult a process. Okay. So those are all the pros. What about the cons, or else why hasn't everybody done this already? Okay, well, the cons have definitely been the transfer costs in the past. So, massive amounts of stamp duty that you've had to pay the state government. Now, for some people, we've been able to get rid of that just to $50. Also, small business capital gains tax concessions can now be used to reduce a lot of the capital gains tax as well. So, now no longer is that transfer cost and significant transfer cost is putting people off. So that's why we're revisiting, looking at our client scenarios and looking at what's going to be the benefit of transferring that into their superannuation. Yeah, because has this been something that's flown under the radar, as a lot of tax breaks are, that people aren't really aware of everything that's out there? So is this one that hasn't been, the uptake hasn't been as significant as it could be? Exactly. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen many media releases in the public or the newspapers about it. So it's something that has certainly flown under the radar a lot, and we're trying to, I guess, tell everybody about it, and particularly we've been educating our clients about this, trying to get them to revisit their own situation. I guess that's the thing with tax and superannuation, especially if you're an SME, especially if you're self-managing your super fund. It's one of those things that you just can't set and walk away from. It's something that you constantly are needing to get advice and be kept up to date on. Yeah, you're absolutely correct, and tax law changes, they're made all the time, sometimes to our disadvantage, but sometimes to our benefit, and especially this is a massive benefit for business owners.
Okay, now just sort of off topic, we've had the Cooper Review, the Henry Tax Review on the federal level. Is there anything that's sort of big on your radar when it comes to SMSFs right now?
Yeah, well, on this very topic, on the Cooper Review recommended that transfer or purchases of property from a member or a relative of a member should be done. There were certain restrictions placed on that. So, for example, instead of a member being able to transfer shares into their superannuation fund, which they currently can do, they could no longer. It was recommended that they no longer do that. That they could no longer do that. So that means that a super fund would have to effectively purchase the shares off the stock market, and the member would need to sell their shares to the stock market. So it just involves a massive amount of costs and brokerage in that. Also relating to business real property, it's been recommended that an independent valuer's report be obtained to transfer that property into the superannuation fund. That's going to add extra cost, extra time and compliance. So which could lead to an extra $1,000 to $2,000. Often these independent valuers reports cost.
So now's a good time.
So now is a good time to do it. Where the Labor government haven't responded as yet. We'll be waiting the next few weeks, and hopefully we'll get a response from the Labor government about where they're going to go with this.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see.
Well, lots to stay abreast of. I'm glad you were in to explain that all to us, Barclay. We do appreciate your time.
No problem.
Thanks so much. That was Barclay Judge from Nexia Court and Company, a superannuation expert, if you couldn't tell. After the break, we speak to a global economic expert who predicts a real estate